These past few weeks have been crazy, with all sorts of Pokemon news coming out left, right, and center. I also know I'm a bit late to this party. There was just so much information, I figured it'd be better to let it ride and get to a point where I can make a full video on it. Also, before we get started, I just want to say that Shigeru Miyamoto, one of the most influential game directors at Nintendo, had his birthday on November 16th, and for some reason, a lot of people online have been reporting that he's dead. So, in case you got wind of this misinformation, I just want to say that it is not true. I saw a couple people posting about how Miyamoto, quote, past 71, so I think the people spreading this misinformation just forgot how to read for a second. Anyway, with that cleared up, let's get talking about the leaks. First, it started with some concept ideas for Pokemon X and Y back in the day. Then we got some beta footage, and now it all piled up into what could possibly be the biggest leak Pokemon or even Nintendo has ever had. I'm not just talking about concept art and yada yada. No, I'm talking about the equivalent to the Sonic Bible, but for Pokemon. This includes, but is not limited to, concept art, Gen 10's codename, proto-mon, the almost return of low health music. Damn it. Wait, what? Media not available? That is insane. I was looking at this post just yesterday and now it is down? That is crazy. Thankfully, Central was able to archive most, if not all of the information, so that's what we'll be using today. We're diving into this plethora of leaked info and potentially more, so make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. And with that, let's try to cover as much as I can within one video, because holy fuck is there a lot to cover. For starters, I want to let you know that a lot of this information is coming from Central Leaks, a credible leaker within the Pokemon community who has previously leaked things like Walking Wake and Iron Valiant way before they were even announced to be an event. And the very first thing they posted to X that kicked this whole thing off was this. Literally just Central losing their absolute fucking marbles at the incoming information. I genuinely got a laugh out of this when I first saw it, although what a fool I was to laugh. A fool indeed. So, apparently, Game Freak got hacked and some dude managed to log into their GitHub, a space where all their projects and assets are stored, and was able to extract beta assets, scripts, and other information. And it just so happens our little buddy Centro here got the whole thing, which is how we know that this eventually turned into this. A lot of it does pertain to the development of Gen 6 with X and Y, although every now and again there are other juicy bits, much like this excerpt from what is essentially the Pokemon Bible, where all the story directors write their in-world lore about Pokemon. I'm sure you've heard about the Typhlosion story. However, did you know there was one about a Vigoroth who evolves into a Slacking due to trauma? And, well, how do I put this? You see, it, R-words, a lady in the forest, which then results in the birth of a hybrid Slackoth baby that gets beaten and killed due to being, you know, an abomination. Or this one that tells the story of a man who would have sex with an octillery he found. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop right there. Weird Pokemon sex put aside, let's take a stronger look at the Proto-mon that have now come to light. So for a second of context, a good chunk of these are from the development of Gen 3, where we also learned that Pokemon were originally planned to have animated sprites, much like how they do in Black and White, but it was ultimately scrapped. Instead, we got these cute little f***ing guys who also just got scrapped. I mean, look at this one. This is such a fun design. I really wish these guys would have made it into the final game, even if the current frog Pokemon market is a little oversaturated. While we're on the subject though, here are a few beta sprites and designs for some Gen 4 mons, complete with a beta model of Hilda that was used for the beta of X and Y. Then there's also this monstrous looking dog that made it so far as to get adapted into a more Pokemon-esque style, but ultimately got scrapped as well. This art here really makes you think though. I mean, how many Pokemon start off as a beast in an artist's unique style before it gets put through the Pokemonifying process? Like, I wonder what horrible monster Klefki was before they settled on its final design. Moving on, some assets and art were also recovered for Pokemon Sun and Moon, where we get to see a couple interesting things that could have happened in another timeline. Apparently during the post-game for Sun and Moon, a gym mechanic was supposed to be added. The lore would be, after you defeated all the kahunas and finished the story, the kahunas would realize that a gym system may not be such a bad idea after all, and they would prompt you to be the first gym leader to adapt it, thus allowing access to a game mode that is very reminiscent of Diamond and Pearl's cave bases, although I'm inclined to believe that you were able to create your own path of trainers and potentially even your own puzzles that need to be solved in order for the challenger to, well, challenge you. This is such a fun concept, and I really hope we see something like this come to the games in the future, as it could open up a ton of interesting ideas for the community to make, and depending on how it was executed, could just be a really fun mode overall. I mean, imagine that like the top 8 or 10 in the world for this game would be considered the quote-unquote Elite 4, except it'd be more like the Elite 8 or even 10 just for leaderboard's sake. And in order to challenge them, you would need to complete like 8 or 10 gyms and get their badges. It could have been similar to the world mode that's present in Mario Maker, but Pokemon. That sounds fucking rad! Why, Game Freak? Why? Alongside this beta gym idea, we also got this video here that was used as a proof of concept for Pokemon Sun and Moon. This video also doesn't come with any audio, so I'm just gonna fill it in myself. but here it is. This video, while being short, shows a completely different version than the one we ended up getting. For instance, the trainer in this video uses a phone to look through their Pokémon and their party, and while eventually in Scarlet and Violet that would be the case, for Sun and Moon specifically, we ended up just getting Rotom as a Pokédex, and the phone was nowhere to be seen. We also see an Ursaring with a weird scar on its face, which could have been an early idea for the Totem Pokémon, like maybe they were all supposed to have some sort of defining scar or battle damage just to signify how badass they are. By the way, in case you haven't noticed, you're a little over halfway through this video, so why not consider subscribing and liking the video, so you can stay tuned for more content in the future. While we're on Sun and Moon though, it seems like a lot of Pokemon for this generation were decided pretty early on, with most making the cut except for a few regional forms for Rhyhorn, Dugong, Seal, Scyther, and Snorlax. It also turns out that Kamala was a reused idea for Pokemon that was cut during Gen 4's production, and here's some concept art of Cosmog. We also finally, after all this time, get a look at what is under Mimikyu's costume, and it's a little underwhelming. Cute as hell, but certainly not what I expected. And as one last little tidbit, here's the concept art for Hano Grand Resort, which was originally called Hano Hano Hotel. We also have some really interesting, stolen, information regarding Pokemon Legends ZA. So according to RiddlerCoo, that game will take place in a modern Kalos. To be clear, this doesn't mean that it'll take place after the events of X and Y. Legends ZA will probably take place before the events of X and Y, although it won't be in the distant past like how Arceus was. Instead, it may take place during the 1920s or sometime before modern day, just not way back when, like how we originally thought. According to this same leak, Legends ZA was shooting for a summer release next year, although if this information is correct and accurate, then that probably won't be the case anymore, as Pokemon, and more importantly Nintendo, is keen on changing plans if a leak is to ever occur. So due to this stream of leaks, we may be looking at a much later release date. Except we do know that the game is at the very least in a playable state, as Centro states that the leaker, quote, claims that they already played the whole main story, and even being incomplete, they liked it a lot, end quote. So the final game can't be more than a year out, even with these leaks, unless they decide to either rework and change most of the game, or can it completely. We also know that Mega Zorora is planned, along with a bunch of new Megas. The art style will be similar to Scarlet and Violet, and that Stunfisk is in the game. Originally this was accompanied by a screenshot from the leaker, but it has now been copyright claimed by the Pokemon Company. So does this mean all the information here is confirmed? I would also like to mention that in Legends Arceus, there were originally going to be two things that didn't end up making it into the final game. The first being a simple jump button, which I understand why it didn't make it, but I don't think you could ever go wrong with a jump button in any game. And the second being that Pokemon were originally planned to auto-battle a majority, if not the whole time, with the player being able to use the face buttons to input commands such as moves, telling it to block, or maybe even dodge. The reason I bring this up is not only because I find it interesting, but also because this could potentially be the system that Legends ZA uses. Central was also able to uncover confirmation that Zygarde was originally intended to have its own game, where the whole reason it looks and acts the way it does would be explained and not shoehorned in like how it was with Sun and Moon. In this game, it would detail how Zygarde is a sort of balance for Yveltal and Xerneas, taking on whatever form necessary to take down either or in the case that they gain too much power. This was then planned to feed into Sun and Moon later on, with the player getting a call from Dexio, most likely in the postgame, and him giving you a quest where Zygarde shows up in order to take down a beast. I'm not sure if this beast was an early idea of an Ultra Beast, and if that's what they meant, or if the beast would just be some new mythical Pokemon that got scrapped. And that's all we will cover today. As always, take this information with a grain of salt, and if you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. And if enough of you do so, then I'll make sure to cover more of what was leaked, cause trust me, this was barely half of the leaked information, if even that. Remember to subscribe, share this video with your friends, and with that, I will catch y'all later. Peace. Oh, also Nintendo has officially stated that they have grounds to sue if you play any of their games on an emulator, meaning that actually pirating the game is completely fine and legal, just not playing it.
This is why we don't torrent. Make sure you always pirate and be safe out on the seas. Arr, 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 arr.
Anyway, thanks for watching. Peace.